discussing. All right, so I'm going to read Galatians 2:21 all the way through. I'm reading from the King James. If anyone has something completely different, feel free to share. But if yours says something along the lines of, I do not frustrate the grace of Elohim, for if righteousness come by the law, then Messiah is dead in vain. Okay, so when I showed that verse as a whole, I just shared with you the word that my version says, I do not frustrate the grace of Elohim. But this is the word G114. And to do away with or set aside or disregard any of those three words, I feel like would have been a much better translation than frustrate. So if we can just right off the bat like replace, I'm just going to do away with, okay? I do not do away with the grace of Elohim, for if now here's where I'm telling you, I mean the word come by are not here. Those are not in the text. The words righteousness and the law are there. So in what I am thinking is that it should be translated for the righteous law or the law of righteousness, which is the book of the covenant. The word then would be therefore. Okay. And the other word that I'm going to change completely, they have is dead in vain. But that word right there is freely. That word should be replaced with the Hebrew word that means freely. Died. So basically, I am suggesting that I do not do away with the grace of Elohim, for if by the righteous law Messiah freely died. That's basically how I would suggest, or that I think is a better translation of this word, that Yahusha, I think, well, I know Christianity, when they use the book of Galatians to tell me that I'm relying on my own works by following the law, that Yahusha did away with the law when he died on the cross. That's what they want this verse to mean. That's what it means to them. But I understand that the book of the covenant is the book of righteousness. It's those are the laws that go along with the book of the covenant. And by being faithful to the covenant, I'm abiding by his laws. And so I think I kind of told you. I think you guys if anyone has any questions about what I'm trying to say, or if anyone wants to add on to what they see here or disagree with anything, please go ahead.
I would agree with you, Linda, because my translation says, I do not set aside the favor of Elohim, for if righteousness is through Torah, then Messiah died for naught. That tells me that the Torah is nothing here. Um, and after you had explained it, um, I also had to do away with a few words, and because reading it that way, reading it, I sat here and looked at this, and I was coming to a different understanding, but it wasn't until after you had gone over it with me with the words that I started to see that they have they have literally twisted it. But how mine reads now, since I changed it, it says, I do not disregard the favor of Elohim. Righteousness is through Torah, and Messiah died freely for us. Um, but I understand it on how I have it here. Also, there isn't a distinction between the Book of the Covenant and the word Torah, and that's the problem.
Hmm.
Um, Mine
Yeah,
says, I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness comes through the law, then Christ died needlessly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the New American Standard
I,
Version.
I like your first half better. I still think the second half, then Yahusha died needlessly. And I just don't like that word needlessly or in vain because we know as believers that in order for that covenant to be ratified, we need Yahusha's blood to do that for us. That's what no one is suggesting it was. Um, in vain or needless. But I think that him freely dying to ratify it is his grace. I mean, that is he laid down his life for
My
us.
my Bible's got a note on that verse, and it reads the the note says, "If one could be justified," and then in brackets it says, "made right before Yahweh by an animal sacrifice, then there would be no necessity for the Messiah to come."
Hmm. I agree with that. That's a good note.
Yeah.
Yeah,
His blood is way better than any animal, but like we were talking about earlier, in the kingdom, when that sacrificial system does come back as a teaching tool, Yahusha's blood is way greater than that. And that is the redemption of the Lamb of Yah. That's what Yahusha's blood is to us. The
I
other
took
thing, oh, go ahead, Kimberly.
mine reads like Christina's, but I took it as for if righteousness is through Torah, meaning works, gets you there, then Messiah died for nothing.
Mm.
Which then you would then the verse makes sense. But because it's not just your works.
Yeah, no,
I,
I definitely it is okay, so that's what I'm saying that I think that part of the verse, the middle part, if you read it like that and you believe that it's works of the law or faith in the covenant. So I think I don't set away the grace of God or the grace of Elohim for the righteousness or the righteous law of the book of the covenant he died freely for. But if his death has nothing to do with the Levitical law, I basically is this is a confusing subject because I wish
Actually,
I could just show you all the Hebrew and like lay it out and it not every verse is appropriately translated in the
right.
Hebrew order, but in this case I think it is. And
I
the other thing I wanted to share is if we keep reading, it's they have it going into another chapter for 3, but if you go right from this where I believe that a good translation is I don't set aside the grace of Elohim for the righteous law of the covenant. Yahusha freely died. O foolish Galatians, who bewitched you that you should not obey the truth of that righteous law, is what I believe that is referring to right there. Before whose eyes Yahusha has been evidently set forth crucified for you. I mean, to me, I think that just reads so seamlessly.
Yeah, and they specifically had a chapter break to take away who has fooled you into not obeying, right? Because
yeah,
that's what they keep trying to spin is he died so we don't have to obey that law, which makes absolutely no sense.
I I've got a friend that he believes that the Levitical priesthood law, where they had animal sacrifices, was a punishment on Israel because of the golden calf incident.
I kind of agree with them.
Yeah, it was the law added because of their rebellion. Yeah, it was, but at the same time, again, it's a teaching tool that pointed to Yahusha. But it did add a burden to him, right? Because just like in the millennial reign, you sin, you pay. You're going to have to pay with the life of a beloved animal that cost you a lot of money.
What's the verse that refers to the Levitical law as the schoolmaster? It's the King James doesn't use that, but that's always the phrase that I want to find it in. Does anybody know?
Um, I just read it. Now, where was it? I think it's in Hebrews.
Oh, was it Galatians 3:24? Yes. Okay, it's Galatians 3:24. So within the same chapter, wherefore the law, this is the Levitical law, was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Messiah that we might be justified by faith. But after that, the faith is come, we are no longer under the schoolmaster, which is the Levitical law. We are now back under the Melchizedek order, which is covenant law, the law of righteousness. It's the law that never goes away. That added law was added temporarily in between the time of the golden calf and Yahusha's death and resurrection.
Yeah.
And people get so confused by Galatians, where Paul says he's talking about the law, and most Christians they think that's the
Ten
covenant
Commandments.
law, the
Yeah.
covenant, and they don't distinguish that he's talking about the Levitical law, and Paul does not really make that clear in Galatians.
I think Paul might have, but I think what we're trying to point out is in the translation, I think they've personally muddied the water and
That's probably
twisted some words like Linda found when it says he died in vain in Galatians 2:21. That vain, I did that is not the meaning of the word. It meant freely. What does freely and in vain have to do with one another? Nothing. They just mistranslated it on purpose because I
They don't
think
want you to keep the law.
bingo,
Right.
bingo.
Yep. They did it by design.
Yeah.
Are we done with Galatians? Because I did want to share one little thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I finally found it. It's in Hosea 9, um, verse 4, and it says, they do not pour wine offerings to Yahuwah, nor are they pleasing to him. Their slaughterings are like bread of mourners to them. All who eat it are defiled, for their bread is for their beings. It does not come into the house of Yahuwah. And this reminded me of the time when I was going to church. And I had visited other churches as well. And one thing that I have noticed is that when bread is passed around and people take their piece and whatnot, there is there's a lack of joy in it. It's done in solemnity. And I could see this is it's a false it's a false recognition of what Yah wanted for us in the Torah, in the in how we celebrate Pesach. And so what the churches have done, they've turned it either into a Eucharist or they've turned it into
Communion is a what a
yeah,
lot of them.
right.
Quarterly communion. Yeah.
Yep. Well, with the LDS church, it's every Sunday, but that's not what it says to do.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
and
the Catholics do it every Sunday and the Protestants do it quarterly, I think. But yeah, that's a great find there, Christina.
Yep.
You know what's interesting? Right before that in verse 3, Hosea 9, verse 3, It says, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt and shall eat unclean things in Assyria. You guys know how I believe the U.S. is Assyria.
Yep.
Well, are not his people eating pork, eating shellfish, eating all these unclean things and going to churches that have them doing verse 4, like you're saying? They're
Yeah.
taking communion at the Protestant churches or every Sunday at the Catholic and and the Latter-day Saints. And it's mourning, and they're not doing, that's the Passover, but not at the right time. They've completely, and then it goes on to talk about what shall you do in the appointed day. Because they don't keep the appointed day. They moved it to a wrong time and completely, basically not even following y'all's instructions at all. But again, the traditions of man.